So I don't actually have an arts background. I traveled for a number of years and then decided to go back to school. And there was a point where it was either art school or sciences, but the practicality of the sciences kind of won out. And so I had a plan. I was on the pre-med track, and everything was going according to plan. And then in my last semester of school, life kind of interfered like it does in a really dramatic way, and the plan had to change. And some years passed, and a couple things happened actually at the same time. I'd always been kind of a creative person, really hands-on, liking to make and do things with the hands primarily. And I finally had sort of the luxury of time to actually explore that creative side of myself. And at the same time, my grandmother, Omi, she died, and she was an amateur painter, and she left me all of her art supplies. So the two kind of came together. And I started painting, and I quite enjoyed painting. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love painting. But it wasn't quite satisfying everything that I wanted from an art form. I wanted more of a physical kind of interaction, and so I thought, well, sculpture, especially sculpture of a certain scale, so that I'm more moving with the piece in a dance of sorts. And that is kind of how it was. I sort of fell headlong into love with sculpture, and it is now my life. It's what I live it, I breathe it, I bleed into it, I do it all the time, long hours. And it's actually been an interesting journey. The sculpture has become, I want to say a tool, but I've gone through a lot of personal transformation in my life in the last few years, and the sculpture it's been like a psychiatrist and a spiritual guide and a mentor of sorts. It's really helped me process my place in the world, where I fit in, and to help me go through those changes. So I guess my work is largely about transformation. It's the one thing that we can be absolutely certain of, is that things change all the time on every single level in our lives. And we tend to have this resist, if not just like an outright fear of change. And yet I see a certain beauty in that process of change, and what I'm trying to do with a lot of my work is to kind of capture that edge of transformation, that liminal space in between what was and what is to be. And in that space, all things are still possible, including wonder and extreme beauty and joy, and that moment is what I try to capture. Yeah, and so with the holes, like I started exploring with holes, I guess at the end of last year, beginning of this year, and they'd be kind of circling around in my head. And then I started thinking about, what do they mean? What do holes in things mean? And we know now that our entire universe is made up mostly of empty space with just a little bit of stuff. And if you look at the surface of something, like with an electron microscope, you can see that there are holes everywhere. So really this thing that we see as solid, whatever it is that we're touching, it's really just an illusion or a construct that we placed on something. And so the whole idea of holes was really appealing because of the impermanence of things and the vulnerability. And also they're also like windows and doors. So windows, and what do windows do? They let light in, they shine light on our situations, and no matter how bad a thing is for us at the moment, it's going to change. Like, this too shall pass, as whoever said that said. And it's so true, because again, things are constantly in motion, constantly evolving and changing. And it's also like the phrase window of opportunity. That in itself means a small moment of time where anything can, or something must occur, right? So we've got windows, and they're also a lot like doors. And doors are the perfect metaphor for change, and what do doors do? Doors do lots of different things. They protect us, they entice us to walk through into something else, they're mysterious, and they cause us to pause as well before we move on to the next thing, whatever that next thing is. Okay, so I started working with concrete, I guess initially because I had already had a little bit of experience with it, just doing various things. And it's readily available. It's kind of a messy, dirty thing, but I love my concrete. I love what I can do with my concrete. I can say my concrete, I'm really owning my concrete. Sorry. But It's such a, lots of things about it. So it's a really ancient material. It's of the earth. It changes state. Again, we're back to that whole change transformation thing. So it starts off as this wet, I make it fairly creamy sometimes, but sometimes it's loose and sloppy, and other times it's dry. But then it changes over the course of time and a chemical reaction into this stone-like substance. So I love that it plays with sort of the themes that I'm working with anyways, just by the nature of itself being concrete as it is. I also love what I can make it do. For example, this piece here. I love that this gray, industrial, practical material that is so solid and enduring, that I can make it do this beautiful, flowing, soft and fragile looking form, And I do hand build each thing. So because I don't have an arts background, I have a science background. So I'm really into experimenting with the different formulas of concrete. I use a lot of different additives, and it's a very, very custom blend, which changes a little bit from thing to thing, but the overall formula is very, very strong, and it's sort of the perfect balance between durability and workability as well, right? So I found that perfect little balance. And I tend to use recycled and low VOC types of products whenever I can. I just recently got some fibers, for example, that I use that are made from recycled carpets. So I also use a lot of recycled styrofoam. When I do use styrofoam, I do put some of it into some of the pieces to try to keep the weight down just a tiny bit. Although I'm not, I don't want to be limited by weight, but conscious of it. And I was actually I was thinking, where can I find styrofoam? And so I went to a local furniture store, and on Wednesdays and Fridays in the back there are bins that are filled with a mountain, like really a mountain of styrofoam. And I got to thinking, oh my God, this is one small furniture store in Victoria. Imagine how much styrofoam, where do we even put all that styrofoam? So anyways, I'm trying to recycle as much of that as I possibly can. So hand build each piece. There's always a metal armature in each one, and I tend to work in an additive way, building up. These are very tricky. They're sort of suspended by a series of wires, and then I build them up very slowly over time. And building up some subtractive work. So I never really know exactly where a piece is going to go. My inspiration comes from various different places, and at the risk of sounding, kind of cliched, I do find a lot of inspiration in nature. But most recently, I was in Arizona and Utah, and I love landscapes that have been really worked on by time and those incredible elemental forces, the beautiful forms and the lines and the colors and just the raw, really intense beauty. It just gets me in here. And so I will see a line and or a curve, and that just won't get out of my head, and eventually I'll have to incorporate that somehow. For example, the pieces with the holes in, I was in, God, I don't know where I was, Seattle maybe, but I saw, it was a beautiful, really modern concrete and glass house. It was a little bit cantilevered, and there was I guess you call it like a steel girder. I'm not sure if that's the right name for it, but it was a load-bearing steel structure, and instead of making it just this linear, boring kind of thing that just did its job, whoever designed it, it had this most incredible curve at the top, and again, that thing spun around in my head, and was the inspiration for that whole series of shapes that are sort of reminiscent of butterfly wings and, surfboards, because my brother's a surfer, the ones with the holes in. So inspiration comes from various places, and sometimes from really odd places. A glimpse caught from the corner of my eye. The other night I was sitting in the living room, and the way the light was coming through the blinds made this incredible pattern on the wall. And again, that's always a spark, right?